Williams is best known for her role as Shirley Feeney in the television series Laverne Shirley, which recently won the TV Land Award for Fan Favorite. In addition, she was honored with a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame in 2004. In April, she won Best Actress at the LA Comedy Film Festival for the indie film Stealing Roses. She recently completed the first national tour of Nunset Boulevard, a sequel to Nonsense, and where she reprised her role as Reverend Mother. Cindy's other stage credits include The Drowsy Chaperone on Broadway, Death Trap with Elliott Gould, Moon Over Buffalo, and The Odd Couple with Joanne Worley. Her film credits include Travels with My Aunt, Conversation directed by Francis Ford Coppola and George Lucas's American Graffiti, for which she received a British Academy Award nomination in 1974 for Best Supporting Actress, and now author of Shirley I Jest, A Storied Life.
Wow, look at that gorgeous picture, will you?
So now, please help me welcome and bring on our guest, actress Cindy Williams.
How did you start in the business? And more often than that, how did you know that you wanted to be an actress?
Oh, those are easy. They're just one-word answers. Gee, I always could mimic. You know, my grandma was the first one on the block when we lived in Texas to get a television, and I was mesmerized by it, and I would watch anything and everything, and I would mimic commercials, like Lucky Strike commercials. They had a girl dancing. You just saw her legs and arms, and there was a hat on top of a Lucky Strike box, and she'd dance, and they'd sing the little commercial song, you know, the little song, and I would sing the song and mimic. But as I really, you know, and I always put on with my sister shows in the garage. I'm sure all you guys did things like that, or made little movies, or you know, were creative in your bedrooms when you were really young.
Or now.
Yeah.
That's...
And so I always had a love for it, but I never, ever thought of it seriously as, oh, this is going to be my career, this is going to be my life. And I wanted to be an ER nurse, actually, but I didn't have the academic wherewithal. I was a C student in all the way through school because I'm dyslexic. I found out later. And so when it came time for SATs, and I went to Birmingham High School here in the Valley, and in my drama class was this wonderful actress, and her name was Sally Field. And at 15, she was brilliant. And so I did plays that Sally and I were in, and we'd do A-cast, B-cast, because there were too many students to play, you know, so you'd do two performances. I was always B-cast, and she was always A-cast. And A-cast got to do like 4 performances, and B-cast 3. But when it came time to graduate, I didn't really have the academic wherewithal with my SAT. I didn't even want to bother taking SATs because I knew I'd fail. So a lot of the students who were in the class were going to this wonderful school called Los Angeles City College, which has an incredible theater arts department. And I thought, okay, I'll go there. And so I did, and very tough curriculum, 2.5 year curriculum. In fact, during orientation day, one of the professors said, there are 236 of you here today beginning our theater arts curriculum, our 2.5 year curriculum. By the end of 2.5 years, there will be 12 of you. And that's how they weeded people out. I mean, you were tardy 3 times, out. You didn't get your, you didn't have your scene work done, out. Goodbye, gone.
Does that sound good, you guys?
And they took no prisoners, but they did incredible theater, incredible productions, and you had to work a year on crew. Either you could either choose wardrobe or crew, workshop, and you had to do a scene a week and a 3-minute scene a week, and the best of those scenes from beginning acting, intermediate acting, and advanced acting, the best scenes of the week in any of those classes was put into a class called Theater Arts 4, which was for the whole student body could take this as an elective and come in and watch this program that was presented by the Theater Arts Department, the best of the Theater Arts Department. So that was a big deal. But by the time we finished there, and I just garnered an incredible love for theater and the American theater and just anything that that dealt with it, from the curtains, on up and down. And I love being on stage. But I thought I was going to go on to teach. Except one day I was in a class and the professor and we were in the main theater, and the stage was there and the curtains, and we were sitting in the, in the seats in the auditorium, and he was talking about theater being bigger than life. And and up to this point I had thought, I'll go and I'll get my BA and I'll teach theater. And then I had this vision of myself, and this goes to your question, Tova, of my students, rehearsing the production, and me walking down the center aisle, crawling up onto the apron, pushing them all out of the way and saying, let me show you how to do this. And I thought I could never teach. I could never, ever teach because I loved doing it. And so that was the end of my teaching career. But,
so there was nothing left but act?
Well, exactly. And wait tables. And, in the school that at Los Angeles City College, and it was the old UCLA Theater Arts Department, which was pretty formidable. And they do not teach you, they put you out the back door and they get you ready. In my day and age, when dinosaurs roamed the earth, they did not prepare you for film. They didn't prepare you how to get an agent or how to even work. They prepared you to go and audition for regional theater or Broadway, and that was it. And so you're at the back door. And so you just live on your Pollyanna ways and your your youthful enthusiasm of knowing you can do it. And so that was kind of it. And I also thought, well, lightning better strike because I don't know what I'm doing. So I just went on, and that's what my book's about that, and went on this journey of, but you have youthful optimism, and you feel as though just the world, and it is, believe me, it's all in front of you, and there's nothing you can't do. And I felt that way, and you get knocked down to the ground, you just pick yourself up, dust yourself off, start all over again. And that's kind of, how that aspect of my life played itself out. And as far as getting a job, I had this roommate, and she was in this program for AFI. It was called Young Filmmakers or something. And I was waiting tables, and she said, hey, Cindy, maybe you could go and get in this. It was a government program. Maybe you could go and get in this program, and, I'm going to give you an introduction to the two gentlemen who run it. So I went there, and I met with them, and they said, this is really a program for filmmakers, and you're an actress. That's what you've been, schooled in. And I said, yes, but, I think I could write, and I could, write a screenplay and direct and put myself in it. And they said, no, this isn't for you, but we have, we're going to give you, and this is how things work. This is how things work. Don't let anybody tell you any different. You're just one day, something's plopped down in your lap, and it's just that magical thing. And so they gave me two names, and they said, we're going to set up an interview for you. These two men they're young producers, and they're starting a management company for young talent, right? Yeah. And the names were Fred Roos and Garry Marshall. Yeah. And so I went to meet them, and I remember Garry said, yeah. And I didn't have any clothes. I had one outfit. and some hippie clothes that I had, some hippie beads and moccasins. But I had one outfit I felt I could wear, and it was this cheap wraparound skirt and this ill-fitting white blouse and these shoes that didn't fit. But I went in, and Garry said, yeah, stand up, turn around. And he said to Fred Roos, who produced The Godfather,
And many other
eventually,
things.
and many other things, and was a brilliant casting director. He said, I like her. She's like a pudgy Barbara Harris. And I loved Barbara Harris, so I took it as a great compliment. And so then it sort of spun
And
from there.
didn't Fred and Garry handle all those actors in American Graffiti?
Harrison,
They had like 8
Candy,
actors, and it was
Mackenzie.
these amazing lists. Harrison Ford, everybody, Ron,
Really?
Cindy.
I didn't know they started
They
this way.
started that, and then they went on to do pictures, and they gave it to their secretary to be a manager.
Pat McQueenie, who became my manager,
Pat became
and
manager.
Harrison Ford.
Yep.
And
They
Harrison
gave
And
him-
Harrison Ford in American Graffiti made $400 a week for 4 weeks. And he was working as a carpenter, and his wife at the time, Mary, who's a lovely girl, she would call me and say, Harry's having a fit again. Because he'd get frustrated because he didn't work. And she'd say, would you talk to Harrison? And we were friends. And I said, okay. And I remember one time getting on the phone with him. I remember where I was standing in Hollywood in my apartment that had nothing but like a box of kittens and a Bible. That's all I had. And it was a bad time in my life.
Sure.
But, and I had rented furniture with a lot of fleas in the couch. Anyway, I took the phone and I said, hi, Harry. And he said, hi, Cindy. And I said, listen, Harry, what's this about? Why are you doubting yourself? And it just came into my mind. I was making it up because Harrison to me was like a big bad brother. I mean, that's how he was. I'd known him before American Graffiti and Mary, his wife. And he was just like this big bad, just this bigger than life, in your face with justice. He was always all about justice and fairness, and had this incredible heart and sense of humor, very self-effacing, but bold, a bold person, which I think comes across. I mean, we can all say that. Yeah. So I just said to him, Harry, you're Cary Grant. You're Cary Grant. Listen to me. And I remember thinking, what am I saying? And I said, someday somebody's going to see that because you are Cary Grant. And I said, you've got it all, Harrison. You've got the looks. He can sing and dance. He can do everything. And he would always feel better. And this happened about 3 or 4 times, and it was always Cary Grant. And that sucker is Cary Grant. And to this day, I adore him.
Yeah.
So funny.
But that's a real success story. And we had to, for Han Solo, we begged George to cast him because he was such a bad boy on American Graffiti that George was a little reluctant about Harry. And because he's just,
Did you test? Did you test
for
for
what?
that? For
Princess
Star Wars?
Leia.
I did. Did you test for it?
No.
Oh.
But I think you did.
I did.
Yeah.
I screen tested
That's
for
great.
it. It was miserable. And they show it sometimes, and I go, because it was all this, looking out, to the right of the camera. That's what George said. And he said, and you're looking at the universe, you're steering the ship. I go, the ship. Okay, where's the wheel? And it was like all this dialogue about, galactic dialogue. And nobody could get it. But yes, I did. And I write about that a little in the book. But yeah.
When you started acting, did you think you were going to be a dramatic actress, or were you thinking comedy, or you hadn't even decided which path you wanted to pursue?
No, I wanted, I was always cast in the beginning as a lead's best friend, and oh, don't worry, Monica. Johnny will be coming back to you. You'll see. And it was always stuff like that, and I never got to play comedy, which I loved. And like in American Graffiti, I said, "Oh, please, Fred, I don't want to play this This girl cries the entire time. There's no fun. I want to play Debbie, the bad girl." And he said, "It's already cast." And I said, "Well, then what about Carol?" He said, 12-year-old. And I said, "I could put braces on my teeth." He goes, "I'm actually casting a 12-year-old in that part." And so I was, and he, anyways, so, yeah. What was I?
Comedy or drama. So
yes. So I wanted to play. I knew I could do physical comedy. I knew I could do comedy, and I wanted to play it so
Had
badly.
you done it just in theater before, or any other specific
in
comedy
high school?
training?
But and I don't think that. I mean, we did The Imaginary Invalid in college, but I played Toinette, but that's not really comedy. It's like restoration humor. So, no, I never, well, in scenes I did, yes, with my friend Bruce Kimmel. And, oh, you should have Bruce here. Oh, yeah. Because right after college, we all got together, and Bruce had his film, The First Nudie Musical, and he put it together, and he actually did it, and it was all friends from college. But anyway, no, I never got to, and even when we did Laverne and Shirley, I had to beg Garry. I said, because he let me do humor, but he kept saying, "No, you're the nice one. You're the solid one. You have your head screwed on straight. You keep Laverne, steady." And I said, "Yeah, but that physical comedy, I can do that." And he wouldn't let me do it. And finally, I must have dogged him so much that he said, "All right, I'm going to write you something, and we'll see how you do. And then, that'll be the measuring point." So he wrote me this little thing where we're cleaning house. I believe that's it. And she gets the vacuum cleaner stuck on her mouth. And she can't, and I come through the room, and it was just written, "Shirley gets vacuum cleaner nozzle off of Laverne's mouth." So he just wanted to see what I'd invent to, how I'd get it off of her mouth. And I think I finally just put my foot up to her chest and pulled. And then we finally unplugged the thing. That was it. We ran around with it for a while. But that got me, and then they started writing physical comedy for me. But I love doing physical comedy, and I wanted to do it so badly. And like I said before that, I was always cast as, well, in American Graffiti, as the girlfriend with, whose heart is broken, and parts like that. I don't know what it was about me, but. So Laverne and Shirley was just such a blessing for me.
So can I ask you a question about that? Because you actually went from movies to TV at a young age, and today people are just going back and forth, and it's acceptable, like in the rest of the world, But at that time, you didn't really do that. If you were in movies, you stayed in movies. If you were in TV, you were in TV. There was not a crossover and so on. So it was a big decision to actually go and do TV at that time.
This sounds silly, but I never even thought about it. I just hadn't thought about television. Well, before Laverne and Shirley, I was offered, Charlie's Angels. That was it. And I read the script.
You guys don't know that show probably, right?
Yeah. Oh, it's, they do it. There was a Drew Barrymore. Didn't they do it with Drew Barrymore? But they're still too young. But anyway, it was a show. It was a show about these three gals, and they were like detectives.
Big bosoms, I think.
And
like that.
Well, no, not Kate. Katie. Anyway, but the part they wanted me to, Aaron Spelling, the part that he wanted me to play was, I remember there was this one scene where the character rides through a vineyard in Napa or somewhere on a horse and shoots a gun. And it was the most ridiculous thing in the world to me. I mean, I'm very bad at reading scripts and seeing their potential. I just am. And I said, oh, I could never do that. So I turned it down. And the next thing was Laverne and Shirley after that. But, I mean, could I have done that? I guess I could have, but wasn't my cup of tea.
You probably
but also getting back to that, in those days, the dramas on television, and because of all the media now, it's serious. I mean, it's really well done, and it's done like film.
Yes.
And the creative aspect of it on all levels is just so superior to what we had. We had Barnaby Jones, was that it?
Yeah.
That was considered a drama, and which it was in those days. But it's so different than what it is now. So going back and forth, I totally, because Colin Farrell's on True Detective, and he's just brilliant. But he's just as brilliant on that as he is in film. And but when when Laverne and Shirley came about, and I had done films, I didn't think about it. I thought, well, I'll do this, and then I'll go back to films. And I think it was Henry Winkler or someone said to me, once you're in this, they
don't let you go.
They don't let you go. And you're constantly likened to that character, and I didn't believe that. I thought I could trump that, but I couldn't. And I'm happy, I'm so blessed with what I have. I remember going up for a movie while I was doing Laverne and Shirley. It was, I forget the movie, but Warren Beatty was directing it, and I went in to meet him, and he recognized me immediately. He said, "Oh, no," and I said, and that was when it hit me. And he said, I'm sorry. He said, it's just I can't have a person as recognizable in the film. And I said, it's okay, it's all right. And I went home. I was so upset, and he was so nice. He called me and apologized. That's when it hit me. That it was for real. That in those days there was no crossing.
I was around,
especially something as big as Laverne and Shirley.
Yeah. Well, we were talking that Tuesday night was the Garry Marshall lineup,
Right.
and it was all sitcom then. And sitcom ruled the networks, and he had like the top 5 shows, and it was Happy Days and Laverne and Mork and Mindy and Bosom Buddies with Tom Hanks. And that was the whole, and at Paramount, it was that corner of the whole lot where everybody worked and played basketball during lunch. And
it's like a college campus.
Yeah, it was. And
you'd walk out, and Robin, and everybody, it was wonderful.
Yeah, Robin would walk over to the set and
Yeah.
hug everybody, and it was very much of a
Right.
family.
And Taxi, and I remember
Taxi
Andy
was there.
Kaufman coming over to the.
Yeah.
Everybody would go over to everybody else's set.
And they all wanted to see
watch 'em
Tony
work.
Danza, who's cute.
Yeah, yeah, very cute.
Yeah, it's that little quarter.
When did Travolta do Welcome Back, Kotter? Was it?
That
He
was
didn't do it on
after-
our
That was
lot.
on
It was later.
ABC, the other ABC lot. It was down, on by
Radford.
Vermont. That ABC.
Oh yes,
Yeah,
right,
the other
right.
lot.
KTLA
Yeah,
or
yeah.
whatever that
So,
is.
yeah.
Yeah, right.
But for the students here, do you think there's a difference between playing for TV, acting for TV, and acting for features? I mean, the schedule is different. You don't shoot 7 pages in
Well, the
one
way
day.
we did, like Lynda, Happy Days, and me, Laverne and Shirley, is it was done like a little stage play, but with cameras, right?
Yeah,
you
it's
did
still-
the three
yeah, 3
cameras
camera.
with the audience behind, sitting between, and the cameras between the audience and the stage. So you still had the feeling of proscenium, but it was on film, and you could be a lot bigger. Film is a whole other deal. It's not. I find it absolutely different than doing a sitcom. Don't you agree?
Yeah, well, sitcom, it's like 5 days a week. You
Right.
show up, you read, you do your rereads, your rewrites every day, and you come in, and then you party during lunch and go play
Yeah.
ball and eat lunch together, and then you leave at 6 o'clock or whatever after the run through. You shoot on Friday, and you go home for the weekend. It's really nice but
Right.
features you sitting for 8, 9, 10 hours while they light.
Right.
And it's not as
And you go out and you say one line, or they call you at 6 in the morning,
Put on
and you're on
makeup.
camera crying doing a crying scene at 7 in the morning, and it's a very, very different ball game.
But not in terms of schedule, but in terms of like
Oh, in performance, definitely.
performance and so on and so forth. Do you downplay a little bit more?
I
in
never
camera?
could figure it out. I couldn't figure it out. No, if you had a good director, you'd say, where are you shooting? Excuse me, where are we shooting? Here? Not here. Oh, no. And I found it, I never did it long enough to learn the technique, and it's a totally different technique. And I've studied it on other, watched other actresses and actors, and it's about moves, attitude, but you have to keep yourself in, within the proscenium of the lens of the camera, and it's and play it. It's a different play. It's just a different play.
Would you tell them a little bit about the process of creating the sitcom? Because I think a lot of actors think, oh, I just get the script and I read it and it's funny. And they don't understand about that 4-day process of getting the script and how much the actors have to create the scenes, the physical, the visual, humor, all of that goes into it. Can you tell them a little bit about the process of making the sitcom?
Well, like Lynda said, you come in on the first day, you read, and then you give your notes that we would to the writers. And Penny and I, and sometimes the rest of the cast, we get up and try and move around on the stage. Now, I'm digressing here, but Francis Coppola used to say that when he would bring his actors in and onto the set, and he would have them go through the scene and play the scene. And he'd stand there with the DP, and because he said, your actors will show you where the camera should go.
Smart director.
And that is just so brilliant, and how to light it. Because the actors intuitively are interpreting the words, and they go to where their bodies send them. That being said, this is a different deal on Laverne and Shirley, except that we would get the script and we'd say, oh, this isn't going to work. This is thin here, and it's not funny. Doesn't start off funny. It isn't dynamic enough. And so we just work on it, and we'd work on it on our feet. The first day, we'd look at it, we'd give notes, and then we'd ruminate it, among ourselves. Maybe we'd try and block one scene, and a scene that might have been full that might work. And then we come in the next day, there's new pages and maybe an entirely new script. And so you go through that and you see what they've changed, and you add that into the mix. And then, because our show was very physical, as was Happy Days, we would walk it and try and just through body language and attitude and pacing, just lift it, just make it funny. And that would be the second day. We'd try that, and we'd give our notes and scream and yell, and as you well know, and give our notes, and then they'd come back on Wednesday, and they'd deliver it to the house at night. There'd be a new script, and they would have taken and woven our notes into, and maybe come down to the stage and seen some of the things we were trying to do. And on Laverne and Shirley, we always aimed toward, there was always a big physical scene at the end, so it was all moving toward that. And we'd block that, and that was just, that was so exhausting. And so Penny and I would mark that, and then by Wednesday, we'd try and have, at least some of the scenes memorized and blocked, and then there'd be a run through with the producers and writers coming down, Wednesday afternoon run through where, everybody's down there, and you could hold your script, but, you tried to throw it out of your hand so that you could move properly and indicate. And then on Thursday, the camera crew would come in. Isn't that right? Mm-hmm. Yes. And they would be on wheels. They would be on dollies. And there would be a dolly grip pushing them. And the cameraman and the focus puller would be on the on the dolly, and they would mark it. We'd mark it for them. So they'd follow us around. So because they had to learn the show themselves to follow us to shoot the show, because there's 3 cameras, A camera, B camera, C camera, and then sometimes a 4th camera. And so that day was stop and go, and we'd still be creating and trying to make things, you know, funnier props, funnier costumes, funnier. And Penny and I and the whole cast, we tried to get it so that it would make us laugh out loud, because we figured that would translate to the audience, to the studio audience, and then translate again into, you know, TV land out there. And so we figured what we laughed out loud at, you know, an audience would laugh out loud at. And so we worked, and then Friday you come in, you run through once, and then you know, scripts are out of your hand, and you run through again. But you'd still get rewrites. You know, the pages
that's
would
what they
look
don't
like.
understand. Every day there's some completely different script.
Right.
Memorize that, work that. Friday you do a dress rehearsal,
Right.
basically with an invited audience.
Right.
And then at dinner, before you actually shoot it, you're getting more notes. And you're getting changes again.
Right.
Which I think is harder, because it's not like memorizing an entirely new scene. It's like one line
Oh,
change.
I know, it's changed.
And now I have to put that in my brain and memorize that.
That was
So-
like death-defying work. I mean, sometimes I'd say to Penny, you know, if Jesus walked the earth, he could make this work. But he'd be the only one who could make this work. And then sometimes we'd be standing behind the door before they'd yell action, and she'd say, do you know your lines? And I go, no. Do you know yours? She said, no. Action! And we just go out. And it was just, because it was so tiring. Wasn't it tiring?
on your brain, yeah.
And just so much stress, but so gratifying. And especially when you heard the audience react, it was just, and that's the other thing in comedy, you don't know what the timing's going to be, because you have to hold for the laughs. And you have to, you know, keep the rhythm going. And it was very different in
And the
those days.
run-throughs on Wednesday and Thursday, Tuesday too, I think we had, was the network. All the network would come down, and the censors, and they would give notes then. And they did not laugh. They had no sense of humor
Oh, I know.
whatsoever. So you didn't know what worked, and the writers were bored with it. And you know, it's like you don't really know what got the laughs until you did it for the audience.
Exactly,
then, which was
exactly.
very gratifying.
And there was a lot of guesswork involved, but it was so gratifying when that audience came in and they reacted the way you wanted them. You were hoping and praying they would react.
See,
And
that's the thing I think about 3-camera and shooting with an audience, is that, you know, they say in theater you work with the audience. Your performance is so based on audience reaction, where in film and other TV you don't. You have nothing to feed off of to add to your performance. But sitcom you do, because you have that mix of the cameras there, but also you have the audience to give you that energy, I think.
exactly, it's a wonderful medium, or it used to be. I don't know if they shoot them the same.
They still do 3 cameras now. Yeah.
Wonderful.
What did you do after Laverne? And I think you produced then, did you?
Well, I took time off, had my children, but yes, I produced. Well, I got co-producer credit, but that's a whole other story. But Father of the Bride, and the way that came about was my son woke me up one morning. He was 3 years old, and he wanted to go downstairs and play. So I took him downstairs to the den, and Turner Classic Movies had just started. And so I turned it on, and Father of the Bride was on with Spencer Tracy and Elizabeth Taylor and Constance Bennett. And I loved that movie as a kid, and I thought, wow, you know, this is like a big old sitcom, and there's something for everybody. Doesn't matter what color, what creed, who you are, what your religion is. This is just a wonderful, wonderful movie and situation comedy. That's how I thought of it, a big screen situation comedy. And I thought, what about an updated remake with Jack Nicholson? And I thought, wow, that's not bad. And I had read the day before that Ted Turner had bought the entire MGM library.
Yeah.
And I knew that this was housed in it, that he owned this now. So the next day I had an audition for a movie at Sand Dollar, and I went in and I forget the movie, but when it was over, I said to the person I met with, I said,
Rosemary?
it was Carol Baum.
Carol.
And I said, let me ask you something. Let me pick your brain for a moment. What would you think about an updated remake of Father of the Bride starring Jack Nicholson? And she said, can I run with that? And I said, well, not without me. But and so it evolved and it became Steve Martin, who's brilliant in it, and Chuck Shire and Nancy Meyer, who are husband and wife, wrote it. Brilliant script. And it turned out to be this marvelous, marvelous remake. And I was just so fortunate. And all I added to, they said, you call Turner because we think he likes Laverne Shirley. You call him and try and get the rights. I said, me? Okay. So I called Ted Turner. I didn't get Ted Turner, but I got his right-hand person, Steve Korn, on the phone. I said, hi, and that's how it started. And then they started holding it up. And then I called and I said, we need to really move this along. And he said, okay. And I felt bad because they were naive. They didn't realize that they owned this and that they should be making these movies. And I had another project over there I won't go into, but they made a big mistake by not remaking that movie. And that was very, very interesting and heady, very heady to produce like that. But when you get an idea and you know that it's something special, you can feel it. Your body will tell you. Everything will tell you. And you've got to just follow that instinct. And because you're your own litmus paper for that. You're your own template for that. Or that's the wrong term. But you've got to follow that instinct. When you get an idea and it takes your breath away, it's correct.
Yeah, the litmus test.
Mm-hmm. That's right. The litmus test,
Do we
right.
have questions, maybe? Questions?
Yeah, let's open for the audience.
You guys, we're chatting up here. You all might have questions.
Okay, then. Oh,
I would like to ask you your definition of acting.
Oh.
Wait, is this a part? She didn't do well in school.
I didn't at all.
So
It's 7 a.m. and she's already asking you that question.
I don't know. It's it's so many different things. It's every element of your being. You mean the actual act of acting?
Yeah.
It's every element of your being, interpreting, filtering the words that are in, the dialogue, the words in the script, through all your elements, and assigning, certain feelings you have that you feel are correct to that character, and then you have to forget about it. That's what George Cukor told. Forget about it. After that, you've done all the work, and then you go out there, and you play it, and you own it, but it's going through you. It's your interpretation of it, of the written word, through every element of your being, through your emotion, your spirituality, your physicality, your mental being, and you put it all together, and that's the character. I mean, because you're given the map, and you just interpret that map, and you've been given the part, so it's yours, and you just, I can't. It's going to be individual for everybody, how they go about it, and you can study people and see how they go about it. Like Meryl Streep, I always like. The first movie she was ever in, I remember critics, it was Julia, and I remember critics saying, watch this little move this wonderful actress does. She only has 3 lines with Jane Fonda, and she did this little thing before she said the line where she adjusts a brooch, and then she comes up and says the line. And I said, whoa, that was just, she added that, see? She flavored it with that. So it's also a little bit of your own flavoring and your own invention. And so it's just a myriad of things. So thank you for that.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Hi.
Hi.
Well, you've talked about how the differences between film, sitcom, and theater, and I was just wondering which one's your favorite medium? Is it the mix between the two? Is it film? Is it theater? What if you only had to pick one to do, what would you pick?
Theater.
Theater, of course.
Yeah. I love being on stage, and I love the audience being there. And if you're doing a play, it's always different every night because the audience is always different. I just like the whole, just the whole feeling of it, of the whole thing, the theater and the exchange of energy. I just love it. Yeah, it's alive. Exactly, Tova. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, how did you usually prepare for an audition like under 24-hour notice?
Lynda can answer that better than me because she taught it, didn't you? I mean, I have not a clue how people do it. It's the most unfair thing in the world, and you're sitting knee to knee with a woman who's, playing your husband. That, and it's like, it's just mind-boggling, and a lot of it is memorization. If you can memorize, I'd say memorize the whole thing, but always hold the script, and maybe mark places where you want to look up if you've memorized it, or look down, because you don't want them to think this is your final performance. But if you memorize the whole, if you can memorize it, just go over it and over it and over it. And also your cue lines, and you could be totally thrown when you go in, and you've got to be able to push everything else aside. But if you memorize it, if you can memorize as much, at least the first 6 lines, your first 3 lines and your first 3 cue lines, then you've got a real good chance with the energy in the room, to start off well and big, and but never let them know that you've memorized the whole thing. Just always. I have a friend who's an actor. He's excellent, and that's what he does when he goes in. He memorizes the whole thing the night before, but he marks the place to look down back at the script so that they don't think that he has the whole thing memorized. But if you can't memorize the whole thing, which I can't because I'm dyslexic and I just can't, then at least try and memorize the first few lines and then get a real feeling, go over them and over them and over them. And another way to memorize is to write them down. Write them down so you see them in your own handwriting, and then the cue line is always important. For years, I didn't understand why why don't I hear that? What is the next line? I hadn't memorized the cue line, not just the cue, the entire line. So, I hope, but it is a formidable task that's put on actors. Sometimes you don't have 24 hours. Sometimes we're sending it over. If you want to go and be in at 10 in the morning, and you've seen actors sit in, they're all sitting like this. And it won't be just you who's going, holy crud, what have I gotten myself, and shaking in their boots. It's everybody in the room. Everybody in the room is going through the same thing. So, but you can really help yourself out if you can just memorize those first 6 lines, and get a handle on that.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Hello. If you could give one valuable tip to anyone, not just a NYFA student, but anyone who is wanting to pursue an acting career, what would it be?
Pursue it, and pursue it and think outside the box, and you've got to put your rhinoceros skin suit on. I had a publicist tell me this, put your rhinoceros skin suit on and go out there, because you can take all the, it's like not being invited to a party most of the time. It's like, and you can't take it personally, although we all do. I mean, we just do, because you've opened yourself up to these people, and then you don't get the part. But you just have to just always pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and start all over again, and be done with that day, and it's on to the next, and the next thing will happen. And you have to keep that attitude. And sometimes it's very, very hard, but you just keep pursuing, and don't take any prisoners. Don't take no for an answer. Just keep going, and always think outside the box. Like if there's an audition that you might not be, able to get in on, you can figure out a way. I'm telling you, you can figure out a way to get in there. If it's a part that you really want. You've heard all those stories about people going after, was it Hilary Swank who went after a part? And but many actors do that. And keep studying. Keep doing like scene work and what you're doing here.
Who was it? Not Jim Miller. Who's the comic?
Jim Carrey?
Yes. Who basically called it his own agent,
Oh, called as his own
agent.
Yes.
His own agent.
That's right, and booked himself into an yes. Yeah. Yes, there are ways around it. There really are.
And get a good agent. There's that too. Yeah.
But even then, yeah.
Hello. My question is, does acting interfere with family life?
I'm sorry?
Does the acting career, does it interfere with family life?
Yes. Yes, it does. I mean, there's just no getting around it. I used to think, I can have it all. I can have it all. Well, you can't. You really can't. But you can have parts of the best of each. And, for me, my family comes first, came first when my children were little, but it puts a crimp. It puts a crimp into it, but you can do it. I mean, and it depends on your partner, and...
Depends also, I think, on what part of the business you are being successful in. I mean, Meryl Streep has 3 wonderful daughters that act, produce, etc.
But she had a husband who stayed home, though.
Well, that's what I mean. You got to figure that one out. So
she also, I remember reading one time, she said, the last time I cooked for my family, we had trout and popcorn for dinner. And that's what it is. It's trout and popcorn for dinner.
But like on our show, it's like almost everybody had a family.
It's true.
And because in TV land, at least sitcom, you would go home for dinner.
Right.
And you weren't on a set 12 hours. So I mean, I think it depends on where you are, and if you're traveling, on feature films and you're going to Australia, book 2 tickets or something like that. But I think it just depends on where you are in your career.
Hiya.
Hi.
I was wondering, you already stated that theater was your favorite medium. What was your most memorable experience throughout your theater career?
Being on Broadway and doing The Drowsy Chaperone. And I don't know if any of you have seen it, but it's a marvelous musical about musicals and theater.
It's one of my favorite shows.
Pardon?
It's one of my favorite shows.
Is it? And just getting to run on stage, and when the orchestra came up, it was just, I'm getting goosebumps right now. It was just thrilling. And I was the first character on stage, well, except for the narrator in the dark in the beginning. And then he says, don't you love theater? That's how it begins. And it is a marvelous musical. He said, don't you just love it when the lights come up and sitting there in the dark and wondering when the lights are going to come up. Anyway, it's this marvelous monologue before the lights come up, and when the lights, I got to play the character of when the lights came up and the music starts, I run on stage. And that, for me, of course, the show was canceled 3 weeks into my run of the show, but I call that my 3 weeks on Broadway. But that was the most thrilling moments. Those were the most thrilling moments on stage for me.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for that question.
Hello. As a TV icon, What comedies and what dramas are you watching at this moment?
Well, I love Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt. And I think it's just marvelous with the mystery crank. And that makes me laugh out loud. As far as, I love The Good Wife. I love True Detective, although I'm having trouble watching it because I just, if Vince Vaughn and I forget the marvelous actress who plays his wife, they have him in, I don't know if any of you watch it, but they're in a 2-shot constantly. Do you ever see that? And they're facing it's strangest. Anyway, I'm digressing.
I love the first one.
Yes,
the second one.
This one is tough to follow. But I love murder mysteries, and I love, I don't know, what are some of yours? Can somebody tell me what you guys like? Do you watch TV, or you like my kids and hook everything up to your computer?
I'm addicted to The Good Wife, which I think is the best written show.
It is.
It's and True Detective. How can you not be?
Man with great taste. Yes, it's true. They're both wonderful shows, and The Good Wife is just superb. Just superb show. Thank you.
Hello, I wanted to ask about how do you keep the energy of your character every time you rehearse your role or doing it? How do you keep that adrenaline, of the character?
That's a very good question. It was all adrenaline, and it was exhausting doing those shows. And by the time it rolled around to where we were actually shooting, we were on adrenaline. It was just an adrenaline run.
I think having the audience really helps.
Because the
theater.
energy,
Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah.
thank you, yes. And the energy would be batted back to you.
But if you're doing a TV, like a TV show, and you rehearse your role every
week,
every time, like in the same way, or are you making something different to make it like new for you?
Well, the pages come in all the time, so.
You mean in the context of one show in 1 week? Or the whole run of the show? It would always be new. I mean, we never did nothing, and that goes along with acting. Nothing's going to be the same twice. No take is going to be the same twice. It just simply isn't unless I guess you could do it more on film, but for our show, nothing was ever the same. It was like pie. It just went on and on and on. There was no end to the difference. It just never, it was always something different. Every time, every take, every rehearsal, always different. So the outcome of the show, it'd be generally mapped out, but, and we'd be going for something, but we didn't know. There were some times in dress rehearsal, the energy and everything was perfect, and then we got to the show and we just missed. We just missed it. Like one time we had this thing where there's a sale, and all the extras and everyone, they opened the doors and everyone ran from backstage, and you heard from behind the department store, it was like cattle running, and we all ran in, and we tried to do this take where like 12 people, the take where 2 people are going through a door and they get stuck and they go out like that. We tried to do it with 12 people. We did it in rehearsal, great, and it was okay in the show. And then the other thing in that was there was a bin. He rolls a bin of sweaters out he says sweaters 15 cents sale, and everyone turns and runs to this bin. And what we wanted to do was, I fall in the bin, and they're tossing sweaters like this, and we tried to do it, and we did it great in rehearsal, where they toss me out of the bin, and I fall back in, and with the sweaters, and they did it great in rehearsal. It was just perfect, and we missed it for the show. So it's always changing, especially in comedy, but I think it changes. I don't think maybe some actors have 2 takes that are alike. I guess. I don't know, but I think it's constantly changing.
Thank you.
Thank you for that.
But it's also true with with comedy that it's so delicate. Comedy is so delicate because you'll do it once in rehearsal amongst you, and it's working and it's funny, and then you do it a second time and it's old because it's not
and
fresh.
the energy. And going to your
Surprising.
question, the energy is different because it's old, and so it doesn't have that youthful enthusiasm
And then if you expect to get the
anymore.
laugh, then you won't.
Oh, that's right. And Penny always had a term for that. Just blow past it. Just don't listen. Just blow past it.
So sometimes you see people rehearsing and it's just so low key. And because they want to reserve the energy and the surprise for when you're on camera. Is that a technique that is...
Well, you can do that, but when you're playing physical comedy, you can't because you've got to see what the physical comedy leads you to, and so you have to play it. But you're absolutely right about that. I've seen actors do that, where they're just holding everything in until it's time to perform, which is a totally valid technique. But unfortunately, neither Penny nor I have that technique.
What was your personally favorite role you ever got to play?
Oh, it was Shirley on Laverne Shirley.
And your least favorite you ever had to play?
My least favorite. I'm sure it's out there. You know, no one's ever asked me that before, but I did Room 222. That was the first job I got, and they wrote me this character, and I never enjoyed. Don't tell anybody, but I never enjoyed playing that character because it was one of those, Johnny will come back to you, Susie, I promise you. And it was just so dull, and I had to get up. I write about it in the book. It was my first job. I was so excited, and then I got there. My first line was, the teacher says, I want you to write an essay on this song. And I had the line, you tell us what the topic is, and we write a composition on it. That was the line. And I tried a million ways to make that funny. And that was the only line I had the first time. And the makeup artist, Shotgun Kelly, do you remember him? Yeah. He was this old-time makeup artist. And because it was my first show ever, he made me, as a joke, they gave me orange foundation. And I went and looked, I couldn't say anything. I went and looked at myself and I burst out crying, and I tried to put a little, pink lipstick on. I started looking like one of the Keebler elves. And I just never had fun playing that. And it was my first part. I didn't have a good time at all. I was tired. And then he'd powder me, the same makeup, and he had the powder puff inside the plastic crinkly paper, and he'd come in and powder me. And they did it as a joke. But I was so out of my mind, nervous and crazy that I didn't find the humor in it. And I played that part. They had me come back 3 times and play that part. Her name was Rhoda Zagor, and I never liked playing that part. But don't tell anybody.
Don't tell anybody.
Hello.
Hi.
As an actor, I know you have a lot of difficulty with emotions or even energy, and sometimes you get caught up by your emotions or energy. And how do you stay focused? How do you
You mean while you're working?
While you're in a play, when you drift away through your emotions, how do you stay focused? How do you get back and don't forget the lines? And because sometimes that happens to me, my head's in the clouds.
Concentration.
You mean when you go up?
Well, when I go up and play, sometimes I get
During
very
the
emotional and just
You're gonna have to curb that. You have to be in the. That's happened to me where I've gone up and on stage more times than I'd like to admit to, but you've got to stay in the play. I've watched myself on Laverne and Shirley where I'm like drifting off during a scene, and I'm like I'm just not present. And I don't know why. I was tired or something, but I caught myself a few times. So you just have to make that note. You're here, listen to what's going on. Even if you're standing back or you're sitting back peeling an apple while the scene's going on, listen to what's going on. And you've got to stay present there. And I'm talking to myself here, too. I'm giving myself some notes right now.
You know, when Pacino was here, he was talking about where he found himself saying lines from another Shakespearean play that it was...
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. If it can happen to Al Pacino, you're in great company.
It's not so bad then, right?
What play am I in? Well, I once actually, I had this play and I cut to the end. I only had 10 days rehearsal. It was Joanne Worley and myself, and we were doing The Female Odd Couple to try and save this theater. And we had like 9 days rehearsal. And there were 2 lines that were similar at the end of each, 2 of these scenes. And one was in the first scene, and third scene, and one was at the end of the play, toward the end of the play. And I started the speech. She gave me the line, and I'm still to this day not sure if she didn't say the wrong line. But anyway, I found myself, going into the monologue for the end of the play, but I wasn't aware of it. And I thought, this is going well. And then she's supposed to exit, and I said, and don't come back. And Joanne Worley turns in the wings, and she goes, don't you want to ask me about dating men? And I go, oh my God, yes, I do. And then my mind rolled back, and I improvised for a while, and then we got back on script, but now we had done the end of the play. So when I go off stage, she went off stage, and then when I exit, the stage manager goes, it was like noises off. He said, oh my God, Joanne wants to know when she comes back off, what do you want to cut to when we cut? And I was like, yeah. And there's that little light backstage, and I look, and I couldn't see, and I go, but I did it. I edited it backstage somehow, some way, and we got through it. And it was Neil Simon, and I felt awful. I mean, he wasn't there, thank God.
But he heard about it.
But I'm sure he heard about it. But God, oh my God, talk about sweating through your suit jacket. I was mortified. But you can't be. I mean, I had to finish the play, and we did.
I have one more question, and then I can't wait to read this book because you see her personality. This is like...
that's just a book of recipes. I'm joking. And how to build a birdhouse.
Yeah. So one last question. So you worked with George Lucas and you worked with Francis Coppola in the early days. I worked with Francis also on Godfather 2. What was the difference in styles? Was there different in them directing?
Well, Francis is your quintessential director, and he's operatic. I mean, it's like, you're in a movie with Francis. I mean, he is, and he loves actors, loves them, and admires them, reveres them. And he's so intelligent. But he'll ask his actors what they're thinking, what they think of this scene. For the conversation, he said, "Who do you think did it?" And all of us said, "You haven't written the end yet?" And he goes, "No, I haven't." And we said, "Holy crap!" Anyway, but he is just so much bigger than life. He's like, I don't know, he's like somebody like Michelangelo or somebody. He's this just great artist, and he will direct you. And I had this tough thing he asked me to do in the conversation, and I said, I don't know how to do this. And it was a turn. He wanted me to turn and look at Gene Hackman with a look of, if you come toward me any closer, I'll disappear into this fog and you'll never find me. And I thought, okay, how do I, goes back to interpreting that through your body. And I said, Francis, I don't know how to do this. I just don't know. And he thought for a minute and he said, when he's chasing you, take every step except the last one. And then when you turn to him, when you take the last step, turn to him. And that body movement propelled me into that look. It just gave that indication of, I will be gone if you come any closer to me. And he just turned it like that. And the other thing he did in the beginning of the conversation, it's the scene in Union Square. He went to and there were hundreds of extras. He went to each, well, not hundreds, there were about 100 people, but he went to each and every one of them and whispered a conversation he wanted them to be having and what they were talking about. And they weren't to tell anyone else. And, well, he didn't say that, but he took them aside and gave them each characters to play. Wow. And that's why when you see the opening of this movie, it is so rich. And that's how he is. He's just rich with just creation. Yeah. And George is the same way, but George is not exactly a people person. I believe if George could have robots playing, and I think he's discussed this with Steven Spielberg, actually. He would. And he's very shy and retiring, and his genius is all in his
toys.
Well, that and just his whole perception of what he wants, on screen. And so they're very, very different. George will, but what they both are is you can say, what, could I try it this way? Absolutely. Both of them are like that. And like the scene in American Graffiti where Ron and I had to make out and then go, and we were both so nervous. And I said, George, how about if we just go out of camera down onto the seat and play this scene, out of, and he said, yeah. And that's how we did it. But George will never tell you anything. It was a joke with Ron and myself. We'd say, George, after a take, we'd say, how was it? And he'd say, terrific. And if you ever ask Ron Howard what George Lucas says the most, it's terrific, terrific. And whereas Francis will embellish and just raise you up, have your back, just wonderful, wonderful.
No, Ron said that the only thing that George did is give you some acting coach, and you rehearsed and rehearsed and rehearsed. The
Gino.
actor basically rehearsed and rehearsed by themselves. Yeah.
Right. We did. We rehearsed, and sometimes Ron and I rehearsed together scenes just by ourselves. But yes, he did. He had an acting coach there that, because there was so much young talent that, he just had Gino Havens. That's who it was. Do you know Gino?
Yeah.
And, so both of them are marvelous and different, just bigger than life.
Because
fabulous.
I was surprised because I heard that George really doesn't quite direct actors, and yet all the performances in American Graffiti was so great, and everybody was discovered. And Ron said that, all the actors kind of rehearsed and he gave you an acting coach, but you guys basically...
Right, we directed ourselves. Yes. But see, that's also the genius of Fred Roos, who cast it.
Yes.
And George, and it's also the genius of George,
yes,
who absolutely trusted him to cast it like that. Yeah.
Like this. Well, I don't know about you. I want to go home and read this.
Doing that.
That's what I want.
Well, you go home. I can tell you a real quick synopsis of it. You don't have to try it.
I already read the Jim Morrison scene, of course. That immediately.
Cindy, thank you.
Oh, it's
so much.
Can I say one other thing. Suzanne Summers she has this iconic little part in the movie. She has one line, and when I was writing the book, I was talking to her, and she goes, "You know what George did? Her line is, 'I love you,' and she's this beautiful girl in this white T-bird, and she says it to Richard Dreyfuss.
Yes.
And so she said she rehearsed it 1,000 times in the mirror. 'I love you, I love you, I love you.'" And she went on, for days.
Yes.
She rehearsed it. She gets to the set, and she's in the T-bird, and they're about to shoot it, and George comes over to her and says, "Oh, roll up the window. I just want you to mouth it." I love that.
That's a great story. Thank you, Cindy.
Thank you, Lynda. Thank you, Tova. And thank you all. You guys are great.